Alright, so hello and welcome to this video. So today we're going to be talking about how I clean my Cascade 1200 filter. So the 1200 filters 315 gallons per hour. Atticus is a 125 tank, so it's filtering his tank a little less than 3 times over, but his tank isn't completely filled up. So first, we're going to start by turning off our intake, then we're going to turn off our output just by flipping those levers. Then we're going to unplug that thing as quickly as possible. Otherwise, it's just going to be running dry, which is really not good for the filter. So now I definitely recommend that you use a towel throughout this process because there is a lot of room for getting water everywhere. So now you're going to untighten those hoses and take them off. Then just turn the valves again to help suck up any extra water that was still left over in the valve. So we're going to do the same thing with our intake right there. And as you can see, when you pull off the tubes, you are probably going to spill some water, which is why I recommend the towel. So whenever I disconnect my intake tube, I always put it inside of the water. You can technically leave it to keep suction, but do not put the hose on the ground, otherwise gravity will suction out most of your tank. I speak from experience. So now we are going to take our tank, or our filter, and we're going to unhook the motor really easily. And we're just going to dump out as much junk as we can from that motor. This is actually the dirtiest I think I've ever had this filter go. I actually kind of lost track of how long it had been. I think it was about 3 months since I last cleaned it. That sounds like a really long stretch of time, which it kind of is, but by waiting longer, you are building up more healthy bacteria in your filter, which is so important to having good water chemistry as well as just a balanced ecosystem. So now I'm just cleaning off this like little grid that sits on top of all of the different like basket sections. So I varied how much I rinsed out the little pads of filter floss. I have a mix of polyester filter floss, which you will see later, from where I've replaced the pads, and then I have the original filter padding that came with the filter. So for the first layer, I really rinsed it off. I definitely want this layer to be clean. It's the initial layer that the water is going to be flowing through. So I definitely want to get most of the junk out in that first initial layer. Then we have the layer that has our activated carbon, and we're rinsing that out. Honestly, I probably need to replace my carbon because I'm pretty sure it loses effect after a while. That's just to help purify the water even more. So now we're going to be taking the rest of the baskets and we're going to rinse off that filter floss, and if it's really gross, we are going to replace it. The goal here is not to rinse it off too well because there is a lot of beneficial bacteria and like ammonia buildup that is food for that beneficial bacteria. So the coarse sponge that I just pulled out there, if you saw that black sponge, that is actually going to be acting as our biological section of the filter where all of our good bacteria grows. So that is extremely important. I did not rinse it off at all. I want all of that bacteria to keep living in the little crevices of that sponge. Most people use BioBalls. This is just what came with the filter that I'm still using. And you could see that bag of filter floss that I showed is just polyester. So far, I really like it. I think it works well, and it's the cheapest option I found. It's cheaper than the pre-cut pads that are meant for this tank, but I think the polyester works pretty well. I haven't had any problems with it, but there might be better options out there. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions. I'm definitely not a professional. So now I'm just shoving all of those little pads and polyester and such back into our filter baskets. The great thing about this filter is that the baskets are pretty customizable, so you can add things, take away things. If you did want to use BioBalls instead of the coarse sponge, you could use those instead. There's just a lot of different variety and options with this filter, which I really appreciate. So there's more of that filter polyester. Also, if you guys have any suggestions of what to do with your old filter media, besides of course starting a new fish tank, please let me know, because I want to do something that's more upcycling with it and more beneficial to the planet. So now we're going to rinse out the main like filter part which is where all of our baskets stack in. This part, pretty much just swish around some water, maybe like rub it down with a brush or your hands or something to get out any junk that's still stuck on the sides, but normally it comes out pretty easily. I have like a little hairnet catcher around the drain, and it got pretty gross from rinsing all this out, so I had to go and clean that off real quick. Cause yeah, this was one dirty filter. Like I said, you want to let your filter get kind of a little bit grosser for like a month or so, depending on how dirty your animals are, and depending on your ammonia levels and nitrates and nitrate levels in your actual tank. But the longer you can go typically without cleaning it, the better, because like I say, more of that food and beneficial bacteria will just build up in your filter, which will actually result in cleaner water, which is a very hard concept to wrap your head around. If you are, a human, you think, oh yes, I need to like bleach and clean everything. But you gotta admit, nature is kind of dirty sometimes, and that dirtiness can actually work out to be cleanliness. So now we are going to stack back everything into our filter. So that's the coarse sponge layer that goes right at the bottom there. This is just a layer of polyester filter floss. Nothing special in that layer. Our next layer is going to be our activated carbon with filter floss. And then our very top layer is going to be just more filter floss, which as you can see, I cleaned out pretty nicely. So when you're stacking these baskets, you want to line up that little like hole tube thing at the end all the way down. I always freaking put that thing on wrong, but that's how it's supposed to look. You definitely want to leave those holes open to help the water flow in and out. So now we're going to take our O-ring, and it took me a little bit to get it on there for some reason. It was not wanting to go on, but the O-ring just helps to keep the connection to the main motor. The motor also has its own O-ring. You should have 2 of these that kind of interconnect with the motor. My laptop is like burning my leg. But yeah, I really like this filter. Initially I had a few issues with it, which I will talk about a little bit later. But overall, it has been working really well. It has a pretty simple setup. This is the first like major filter I have ever used, and I definitely needed something heavy duty for the turtle. Yeah, I had to fix those baskets. They were kind of popping up on each other, but here they all are fixed. But yeah, it's really good with turtles. It can get the job done really well. So now we are going to just clip back in the main motor. Sometimes it can take a little bit to get those O-rings lined up, so just gotta wiggle it around a bit and then snap it back into place. I also like to fill it up with a little bit of dechlorinated water just to kind of help it get more air out of it and helps jumpstart the process of pushing water in and out. So now we will be setting it back up. So we're just of course going to set it down, and then we're going to hook back up our pipes or our tubing. So we want to put down that towel as always, just in case we spill any water. Doesn't matter which order you do this initial tube reattachment on. I started with my intake, which the intake and outtake are both labeled on the thing. Of course, they are also color coordinated. But if you forget what the blue stands for intake, it is labeled at the very bottom. So I want to screw those on tightly, not too tight though, because otherwise you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get it off. Then we're going to open up our valves, and then I like to go ahead and start pushing to help pump some water in. The initial problem that I had with this filter is the fact that it is really meant to work with gravity. Gravity essentially does the majority of the work for this filter. The motor, of course, is there to help, but because I do not have a tank that is on a tank stand and it is not up above the filter, there were some initial problems because I'm working without any gravity help. So it definitely does take a little bit of extra effort to get it to work, but it can work without being without having a tank up above the filter. I find that if you put the output into the water as you're doing this, it kind of helps get some of those air bubbles out. So you just want to pump and then plug it in and if nothing comes out after like a few seconds, unplug it, because once again you don't want your motor running dry. That's bad for it. So then pump again, plug it back in, and wash, rinse, repeat until you get it to come back out. It looks like a little bit of a bear, which is why I like to fill it up with dechlorinated water before doing this. I just did not fill it up with enough dechlorinated water. But there we go, you can see it is running once more and is running currently completely fine. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was kind of helpful to you guys. I'm definitely no aquarium professional. I just have everything as clean as can be for my turtle. And of course now you get to clean up the bathtub or the sink or wherever the heck you did this. I wish I had a nice deep sink to do this in. But yeah, this is my little turtle Atticus, who is now happy because he gets the filter. He likes to sit under it and let the water run on top of him. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys learned something. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will try to help you out with what little knowledge I have. But I'll see you guys later. Bye.